The fall of Zorathis. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning metal and the distant echoes of explosions. Lyra stumbled through the crumbling corridors of the derelict space station, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her once vibrant blue skin was now dull and streaked with ash, and her slender frame trembled with exhaustion. She clutched a small, glowing orb close to her chest, the last remnant of her home planet, Zorathis. The station shook violently as another explosion rocked its fragile structure. Lyra's heart pounded as she glanced over her shoulder, her large, luminous eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of pursuit. The alien raiders were relentless, their leader, Korvax, a towering figure with crimson skin and glowing yellow eyes, had made it clear that he would stop at nothing to claim the artifact she carried. "You can't run forever, little one," Korvax's voice echoed through the corridors, sending a chill down Lyra's spine. "Give me the artifact, and I might let you live." Lyra's grip tightened on the orb. It was more than just a piece of technology, it was a symbol of her people's resilience, a key to their survival. She couldn't let Korvax have it, no matter the cost. She ducked into a narrow maintenance shaft, her movements quick and silent. The shaft led to a lower level of the station, where the air was colder and the lights flickered ominously. Lyra's mind raced as she tried to formulate a plan. She needed to get off the station, but the raiders had destroyed all the escape pods. Her only hope was to reach the docking bay and find a ship, any ship, that could take her away from this nightmare. As she emerged from the shaft, Lyra froze. Standing before her was one of Korvax's enforcers, a hulking brute with metallic armor grafted onto its body. Its glowing red eyes locked onto her, and it let out a guttural growl. "End of the line, scavenger," the enforcer snarled, raising a massive clawed hand. Lyra's instincts kicked in. She darted to the side, narrowly avoiding the enforcer's swipe. Her movements were fluid and precise, a testament to her years of scavenging in the ruins of Zorathis. She reached for a loose pipe on the wall and swung it with all her might, striking the enforcer's head. The creature staggered, giving Lyra the opening she needed. She sprinted down the corridor, her heart pounding in her ears. The docking bay was just ahead, but so were more of Korvax's forces. Lyra knew she couldn't fight them all, but she had to try. She couldn't let the artifact fall into their hands. As she burst into the docking bay, Lyra's eyes widened in despair. The bay was in ruins, with shattered ships and debris scattered everywhere. There was no way out. She turned to face her pursuers, her back against the wall, the orb clutched tightly to her chest. Korvax stepped forward, a cruel smile twisting his features. "You've led us on quite the chase, little one. But it's over now. Hand over the artifact, and I'll make your death quick." Lyra's eyes burned with defiance. "You'll have to kill me first." Korvax's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold fury. "So be it." As the raiders closed in, Lyra closed her eyes, whispering a silent prayer to the spirits of her ancestors. She braced herself for the end, but it never came. A deafening roar filled the docking bay as a sleek, human-made ship descended from above, its engines blazing. The raiders scattered as the ship's weapons fired, creating a barrier of smoke and debris between Lyra and her attackers. The ship's hatch opened, and a human man stepped out, his face obscured by a helmet. He moved with purpose, his movements quick and efficient as he dispatched the remaining raiders with a combination of skill and technology. Lyra stared at him in shock, her mind struggling to process what was happening. The human approached her, his voice calm and reassuring. "You're safe now. Come with me if you want to live." Without hesitation, Lyra took his hand, and together they boarded the ship. As the hatch closed behind them, Lyra felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in what felt like an eternity. She didn't know who this human was or where he was taking her, but she knew one thing for certain: her journey was far from over. The human encounter. The hum of the ship's engines was a steady, comforting sound, a stark contrast to the chaos Lyra had just escaped. She sat in the co-pilot's seat, her hands trembling as she clutched the glowing orb. The human, who had introduced himself as Ethan, was busy at the controls, his movements calm and deliberate. His helmet was off now, revealing a face that was both rugged and kind, with sharp blue eyes that seemed to see right through her. "You're safe now," Ethan said, his voice low and steady. "We're out of their range. For now." Lyra nodded, though she didn't feel safe. Not yet. Her mind was still reeling from the attack, from the loss of her home, her people. She glanced at Ethan, studying him. He was unlike any human she had ever encountered. Most humans she had heard of were traitors or mercenaries, driven by profit or power. But Ethan seemed different. There was a quiet strength about him, a sense of purpose that went beyond mere survival. "Why did you help me?" Lyra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "I was in the area. Heard the distress signal. Figured someone needed help." Lyra frowned. It wasn't much of an answer, but she didn't press him. She was too tired, too overwhelmed. Instead, she turned her attention to the orb in her hands. It pulsed faintly, its light casting soft shadows on the walls of the ship. It was the last piece of her people's legacy, a key to an ancient technology that could change the fate of the galaxy. And now, it was her burden to protect. "What is that thing, anyway?" Ethan asked, nodding toward the orb. Lyra hesitated. She didn't know if she could trust him, but she didn't have much of a choice. "It's a relic. From my home. It's important." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Important enough to get you chased by a pack of raiders?" Lyra nodded. "They want its power. But they don't understand it. They'll destroy everything if they get their hands on it." Ethan was silent for a moment, his eyes fixed on the controls. Then he sighed. "Look, I don't know what you're mixed up in, but it's clear you're in over your head. I can help you, but you're going to have to trust me." Lyra looked at him, her heart pounding. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, not after everything she had been through. But Ethan had saved her life, and she had no one else to turn to. She nodded slowly. "Okay. I'll trust you." Ethan gave her a small smile. "Good. First things first, we need to get out of this sector. Korvax's forces will be looking for us, and we can't afford to be caught." He turned back to the controls, his hands moving swiftly as he plotted a course. Lyra watched him, her mind racing. She didn't know where they were going, but she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't let Korvax get the orb. No matter what. The ship, which Ethan called the Starblade, was a marvel of human engineering. It was small but fast, equipped with advanced navigation systems and a cloaking device that made it nearly invisible to sensors. As they traveled through the stars, Lyra couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. She had never been on a human ship before, and the technology was unlike anything she had ever seen. "Where are we going?" Lyra asked after a while. "Somewhere safe," Ethan replied. "A place where Korvax won't find us. At least, not right away." Lyra nodded, though she wasn't entirely reassured. She glanced at the orb again, its light flickering faintly. It was a constant reminder of the danger they were in, of the responsibility she carried. "You know," Ethan said, breaking the silence, "you're not the first person I've rescued from raiders. Humans, aliens, doesn't matter. I've seen what they can do. And I've made it my mission to stop them." Lyra looked at him, curious. "Why? What drives you?" Ethan's expression darkened, and for a moment, Lyra thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed. "Let's just say I've seen enough suffering to last a lifetime. If I can do something to stop it, I will." Lyra nodded, understanding. She felt the same way. The loss of her home, her people, it was a pain she carried every day. But she also carried hope. Hope that one day, she could make things right. Hours passed, and the Starblade continued its journey through the stars. Lyra dozed off at one point, her exhaustion finally catching up with her. When she woke, they were approaching a small, remote planet. It was a barren place, with rocky terrain and a thin atmosphere, but it was hidden from prying eyes. "This is it," Ethan said as they descended. "We'll lay low here for a while, figure out our next move." Lyra nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Korvax was relentless, and she knew he wouldn't stop until he had the orb. But for now, they were safe. And that was enough. As they landed, Lyra took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't do this alone. And for the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of hope. The artifact's secret. The barren planet was eerily quiet, its rocky surface bathed in the pale light of a distant star. Ethan and Lyra stepped out of the Starblade, their boots crunching against the gravelly ground. The air was thin, barely breathable, but the suits they wore provided enough oxygen to keep them going. Lyra clutched the orb tightly, its faint glow a constant reminder of the weight she carried. "This way," Ethan said, leading her toward a small cave hidden among the rocks. "We'll set up camp here. It's safe, for now." Lyra followed him, her eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of danger. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that Korvax's forces were closer than they thought. But for now, there was nothing. Just the endless expanse of rocks and dust. Inside the cave, Ethan set up a portable generator, its soft hum filling the space with warmth and light. He unfolded a small table and gestured for Lyra to sit. "We need to talk," he said, his tone serious. Lyra hesitated but eventually sat down, placing the orb on the table between them. Its light flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls of the cave. Ethan studied it for a moment, his expression unreadable. "You said this thing is important," he began. "But you haven't told me why. If I'm going to help you, I need to know what we're dealing with." Lyra took a deep breath, her mind racing. She didn't know if she could trust Ethan completely, but she had no choice. She needed his help. "It's a quantum resonance key," she said finally. "A relic from my people's ancient technology. It's the key to something powerful. Something that could change the galaxy." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "How powerful are we talking?" Lyra hesitated, then leaned forward, her voice low. "It said that the key can unlock the Zorathian archives, a repository of knowledge and technology that was lost when my planet was destroyed. If Korvax gets his hands on it, he could use it to build weapons, to conquer entire systems. He could destroy everything." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "And you're sure it still works?" "The orb, I mean." Lyra nodded. "It's damaged, but it's still functional. I don't know how to use it." "Not yet." Ethan leaned back, his expression thoughtful. "So what's the plan? We can't just keep running forever. Korvax will find us eventually." Lyra looked down at the orb, her fingers tracing its intricate surface. "There's a place, a hidden colony. My people built it as a refuge, a place to preserve our culture and technology. If we can get there, we might be able to unlock the orb's secrets. We might be able to stop Korvax." Ethan nodded slowly. "All right. Then that's where we'll go. But we'll need supplies, and we'll need to stay off the radar. Korvax's forces are everywhere." Lyra looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you. For everything." Ethan gave her a small smile. "Don't thank me yet. We're not out of the woods." The hidden colony's betrayal. The chamber was bathed in the orb's radiant light, its glow illuminating the ancient carvings that covered the walls. Lyra stood by the pedestal, her hands trembling as the archives began to activate. The air was thick with tension, the weight of centuries pressing down on her. But there was no time to marvel at the technology of her ancestors. Korvax was here, and he was not alone. Ethan stood between Lyra and Korvax, his weapon raised. His stance was steady, but Lyra could see the tension in his shoulders. Korvax was a formidable opponent, his crimson skin and glowing eyes a stark reminder of the danger he posed. Behind him, a group of raiders filed into the chamber, their weapons trained on Ethan and Lyra. "You've led me on quite the chase," Korvax said, his voice dripping with malice. "But it ends here. Hand over the orb, and I might let you live." Lyra's grip tightened on the pedestal. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. This technology, it's not meant for you." Korvax laughed, a cold, grating sound. "It's not meant for anyone. It's a relic, a tool. And tools are meant to be used." Ethan's finger hovered over the trigger of his weapon. "You're not taking it." Korvax's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold fury. "So be it." He raised his hand, and the raiders opened fire. Ethan dove to the side, pulling Lyra with him as energy blasts ricocheted off the walls. The chamber was filled with the sound of gunfire and the hum of the orb's energy, a chaotic symphony that echoed through the ancient halls. "We need to get out of here," Ethan shouted, his voice barely audible over the noise. Lyra nodded, her mind racing. The orb's light was growing brighter, its energy pulsing in time with her heartbeat. She could feel it, a connection to the archives, to the knowledge of her people. But she didn't know how to use it, not yet. "This way," she said, grabbing Ethan's hand and pulling him toward a narrow passageway hidden behind the pedestal. The raiders' shots narrowly missed them as they slipped into the passage, the door sliding shut behind them. The passage was dark, the only light coming from the orb in Lyra's hands. They moved quickly, their footsteps echoing through the narrow corridor. Lyra could hear Korvax's voice behind them, his anger palpable. "You can't run forever," he shouted, his voice echoing through the passage. Lyra's heart pounded as they reached the end of the corridor. It opened into a larger room, its walls lined with ancient consoles and holographic displays. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decay, a reminder of how long the colony had been abandoned. "What is this place?" Ethan asked, his eyes scanning the room. "The control center," Lyra said, her voice filled with awe. "This is where the archives are stored." She stepped forward, placing the orb on a console in the center of the room. Its light flared, and the consoles came to life, their screens flickering with ancient text and symbols. Lyra's hands moved swiftly over the controls, her mind racing as she tried to decipher the information. "We don't have much time," Ethan said, his voice tense. "Korvax will find us." Lyra nodded, her eyes fixed on the screens. "I know. Just, give me a moment." The archives were vast, a repository of knowledge that spanned centuries. Lyra's heart ached as she scrolled through the information, the weight of her people's history pressing down on her. But there was no time to grieve. She needed to find something, anything, that could help them. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the room, deep and resonant. "Welcome, descendant of Zorathis." Lyra froze, her eyes wide. Who are you?" "I am the guardian of the archives," the voice replied. "I have waited for your return." Ethan's hand tightened on his weapon. "What is this?" Lyra shook her head, her mind racing. It's an AI. A guardian. It's here to protect the archives." The guardian's voice was calm, almost soothing. "You have brought the key. The archives are now yours to command." Lyra's heart swelled with hope. "Can you help us? We're being pursued by raiders. They want the orb." The guardian was silent for a moment, then said, "The archives contain many secrets, many weapons. But they are not to be used lightly." Lyra's mind raced. "We don't have a choice. If Korvax gets the orb, he'll use it to destroy everything." The guardian was silent again, then said, "Very well. I will grant you access to the defense systems. But be warned, the power you wield is great, and it comes with a price. Lyra nodded, her determination unwavering. We'll take that risk. The consoles flickered, and a holographic map of the colony appeared, showing Korvax and his raiders moving through the corridors. Lyra's hands moved swiftly over the controls, activating the colony's defenses. The walls shuddered as hidden turrets emerged, their barrels glowing with energy. Let's see how they like this, Ethan said, a grim smile on his face. Korvax and his raiders were relentless, their footsteps echoing through the corridors as they searched for Lyra and Ethan. But they didn't get far. The colony's defenses activated, the turrets unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that forced the raiders to retreat. What is this? Korvax snarled, his eyes blazing with fury. Lyra's voice echoed through the corridors, amplified by the colony's systems. You're not welcome here, Korvax. Leave now, or face the consequences. Korvax laughed, a cold, cruel sound. You think you can stop me? You're just a child, playing with toys you don't understand. Lyra's heart pounded as she watched the holographic map. Korvax was getting closer, his determination unwavering. She turned to Ethan, her eyes filled with desperation. We need to do something. He's not going to stop.